PodCastle, episode 794 for Tuesday the 4th of July 2023. This is Not a Wardrobe Door by Merc Fen Wolfmore, read by a full cast and rated G. Good morning, good day, good afternoon and good evening, and welcome to PodCastle, the flying castle of fantasy fiction. I'm your host, Matt Dovey, and it's once again my privilege to present a PodCastle 15th anniversary celebration episode. This week's story was selected by glorious editor emeritus Rachel K. Jones, and our episode today closes out with her voice back in your earphones for a half-hour chat about all things PodCastle, writing, and Nicolas Cage. This story was originally run as episode 413 in April 2016, having originally been published at Fireside Fiction. Merc Fen Wolfmore is a queer, non-binary writer who lives in Minnesota and has been a Nebula Awards finalist. Their stories have appeared in Lightspeed, Fireside, Apex, Uncanny, Nightmare, and several years' best anthologies. You can find Merc on Twitter at Merc_Wolfmore or at their website, mercfenwolfmore.com. Your narrators today are a veritable rogues gallery of PodCastle alumni and EA luminaries. For the sake of brevity, I will refer you to the website for all their bios, but reading for you today are Dave Thompson as the narrator, Jen R. Albert as Ellie/L, Rachel K. Jones as Zara, Alastair Stewart as Misu, Khalida Muhammad Ali as the Falcon Queen, Graham Dunlop as the Forgotten Book, and Marguerite Kenner as Lorraine. And now pay attention, for our tale is about to begin, and it's trying to get through to you.
This is Not a Wardrobe Door by Merc Fen Wolfmore.
Dear Gatekeeper, hi, my name is Ellie and I'm 6 years old, and my closet door is broken. My best friend Zara lives in your world, and I visited her all the time, and sometimes I got older but turned 6 again when I came back. But that's okay. Can you please fix the door so I can play with Zara? Love, Ellie.
Zara packs lightly for her journey. Rose-petal rope and dewdrop boots, a jacket spun from bee-song and buttoned with industrial-strength cricket clicks. She secures her belt, spun from the cloud memories, of course, and picks up her satchel. It has food for her and oil for Misu. Her best friend is missing, and she must find out why. Misu, the palm-sized mechanical microraptor, perches on her seaweed braids, its glossy raindrop-colored feathers ruffled in concern. Misu says,
"But what if the door is locked?"
Zara smiles.
"I'll find a key."
But secretly, she's worried. What if there isn't one?
Dear Gatekeeper, I hope you got my last couple letters. I haven't heard back from you yet, and the closet door still doesn't work. Mummy says I'm wasting paper when I use too much crayon, so I'm using markers this time. Is Zara okay? Tell her I miss playing with the sea monsters and flying to the moon on the dragons most of all. Please open the door again. Ellie, age 7.
Zara leaves the treehouse and climbs up the 1,503 rungs of the polka dot ladder, each step a perfect note in a symphony. When she reaches the falconry above, she bows to the Falcon Queen and asks if she may have a ride to the land of doors. The Falcon Queen tilts her magnificent head.
"Have you not heard?"
asks the Queen, in a voice like spring lightning in winter calm.
"All the doors have gone quiet. There is a disease rotting wood and rusting hinges, and no one can find a cure."
Misu shivers on Zara's shoulder.
It's like the dreams, when everything is silent.
Zara frowns.
Hasn't the Empress sent scientists to investigate?
The Falcon Queen nods.
"They haven't returned. I dare not send my people into the cursed air until we know what is happening.
Zara squares her shoulder. She needs answers, and quickly. Time passes differently, faster, on Ellie's home planet, because their worlds are so far apart, and a lag develops in the space-time continuum.
Then I will speak to the forgotten book,
Zara says, hiding the tremor in her voice. The falcons ruffle their feathers in anxiety. Not even the Empress sends envoys without the forgotten book's approval.
You are always brave. Very well, then. I will take you as far as the Island of Stars.
Hi, Gatekeeper. Are you even there? It's been almost a year for me and still nothing. Did the Ice Elves get you? I hope not. Zara and I trapped them in the core of a passing comet, so they go away. But you never know. Why can't I get through anymore? I'm not too old, I promise. That was those Narnia books that had that rule. And they were stupid. We read them in class. Please say something. Ellie, age 8.
Zara hops off the Falcon Queen's back and looks at the Island of Stars. It glows from the dim silver bubbles that thicken the air like tapioca pudding. She sets off through the jungle of broken wire bed frames and abandoned armchairs. She steps around rusting toys and rotting books. There are memories curled everywhere, sad and lonely things, falling to pieces at the seams. She looks around in horror.
What happened?
Misu points with a tiny claw.
Look!
In the middle of the island stands the forgotten book, its glass case shattered and anger radiating off its pages.
Leave,
says the book,
before my curse devours you.
Gatekeeper. I tried to tell Mom we can't move, but she won't listen. So now I'm 300 miles away, and I don't know anybody, and all I want to do is scream and punch things, but I don't want Mom to get upset. This isn't the same closet door. Zara explained that the physical location wasn't as fixed, like normal doors in our world, but I'm still freaking out. I found my other letters. Stacks of notebook paper scribbled in crayon and marker and finger paint, all stacked in a box in Mom's bedroom. What are you doing with this? I screamed at Mom, and she had tears in her eyes. Why did you take the letters? They were supposed to go to Zara. Mom said she was sorry. She didn't want to tell me to stop since it seemed so important, but she kept finding them in her closet. I said I'd never put them there, but she didn't believe me.
We can't go there again,
Mom said.
No one ever gets to go back.
And she stomped out of the kitchen and into the rain. Has my mom been there? Why didn't she ever tell me? Why did you banish her too? What did we do so wrong that we can't come back? Ellie.
Zara's knees feel about to shatter.
Why are you doing this?
Zara grips an old, warped rocking chair.
You've blacked out the land of doors, haven't you?
Yes,
says the book.
All who go there will sleep undreaming until the end.
Zara blinks hard, her head dizzy from the pressure in the air.
You can't take away everyone's happiness like this.
No? Why not? No one ever remembers us there. They forget and grow old and abandon us.
That's not true. Ellie remembers. There are others.
Misu nods. Zara pushes through the heavy air, reaching out a hand to the book.
They tell stories of us there,
Zara says, because Ellie used to bring stacks of novels with her, instead of PB&J sandwiches in her backpack.
There are people who believe, but there won't be if we close all the doors. Stories in their world will dry up. we'll start to forget them too.
We mean nothing to them.
Zara shakes her head.
That's not true. I don't want my best friend to disappear forever.
Gatekeeper. I don't know why I bother anymore. You're not listening. I don't even know if you exist. It's been a while, huh? Life got busy for me. High school mostly. Mom got a better job, and now we won't have to move again. Also, I met this awesome girl named Lashana, and we've been dating for a month. God, I'm so in love with her. She's funny and smart and tough and kind, and she really gets me. Sometimes she reminds me of Zara. I asked Mom why she kept my letters. She didn't avoid me this time.
I had a door when I was younger,
she said, and she looked so awfully sad.
I was your age, and I met the person I wanted to stay with forever. But then the door it broke or something. I tried dating here, met your father, but it just wasn't the same. Then he ran off, and it was like losing it all again.
I told Lashana about Zara's world. She said she didn't want to talk about it. I think maybe she had a door too. I was so angry growing up, feeling trapped. You know the best thing about Zara? She got me. I could be a girl, I could be a boy, and I could be neither. Because that's how I feel a lot of the time, shifting around between genders. I want that to be okay, but here? I don't know. The thing is, I don't want to live in Zara's world forever. I love things here too. I want to be able to go back and forth and have friends everywhere and date Lashana and get my degree and just live. This will be my last letter to you, Gatekeeper. If there's one thing Zara and I learned, it's that you have to build your own doors sometimes. So I'm going to make my own. I'll construct it out of salvaged lumber. I'll take a metalworking class and forge my own hinges. I'll paper it with all my letters and all my memories, and I'll set it up somewhere safe. And here's the thing. I'll make sure it never locks. My door will be open for anyone who needs it. My mom, Lashana, myself. L.
The book is silent.
Please, remove the curse. Let us all try again.
Zara says, and she lays her hand gently on the forgotten book and lets the book see all the happy memories she shared with Ellie once, and how Ellie's mom Lorraine once came here and met Vasha, who was waited by the door since the curse fell, and Misu, who befriended the lonely girl Lashana and longs to see her again, and so many, many others that Zara has collected, her heart overfilled with joy and loss and grief and hope. In return, she sees through space and time, right into Elle's world, where Elle has built a door and has her hand on the knob.
Elle,
Zara calls. Elle looks up, eyes wide.
Zara?
Yes.
Zara says, and knows her voice will sound dull behind the door.
I'm here.
Elle grins.
I can see your reflection in the door. Is that the book with you?
The book trembles.
She remembers.
Zara nods. The air is thinning, easing in her lungs.
I told you, not everyone forgets.
I would like to see Lashana again.
Very well. The curse will be removed.
Elle turns the handle. Bright lights beam into the island of stars, and Elle stands there in a doorway, arms spread wide. Zara leaps forward and hugs her best friend.
You came back.
I brought some people with me, too.
Elle says, and waves behind her where 2 other women wait. Lorraine steps through the light with tears in her eyes.
I never thought I could come back.
Misu squeaks in the light and flies to Lashana. Zara smiles at her friends. Things will be all right,
We have a lot of work to do to repair this place.
Zara says. She clasps Elle's hands.
The curse is gone, but we have to fix the doors and wake the sleepers. Are you ready?
Elle grins and waves her mom and girlfriend to join her.
Yes. Let's do this.
And welcome back. That was This Is Not a Wardrobe Door by Merkven Wolfmore. And if you enjoyed that, then I've got great news for you, because they've been here 6 times in total. As well as this story, we've run Where Monsters Dance as episode 385, or Be Forever Fallen as episode 451, What the Fires Burn as episode 481, Fathoms Deep and Fathoms Cold as episode 581, and my particular favourite, Iron Aria, as episode 518. And now join me in welcoming back PodCastle's rebound editor, as she asked to be known the last time this story ran. Hello, Rachel.
Hi, Matt.
How are you doing?
I'm fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you. I'm very glad to hear it. First off, would you like to introduce yourself for those listeners who may not have been around for your editorial run back in the day?
Yeah, so I'm Rachel K. Jones, aka PodCastle's rebound editor, which means that I was editor of PodCastle, I believe it was 2016, 2017, in that area. Was it
15 to 16, I think.
See, I've already forgotten. And, because my stint was very short, I kind of fell between 2 much longer tenures. So the joke there is that, I helped PodCastle get over its long-term editor, so it was ready to love again.
Yeah, because it was Dave and Anna before you who'd done 5 years, and then after you was Jen, who did 7 years or something.
Yeah.
So you were very much the as you say, the rebound in the middle.
Yeah.
So why this story?
Well, first of all, I'm just a shameless Merkven Wolfmore fangirl.
Yeah, so
I love their work. Everything they do is just beautiful and compassionate, but also a lot of fun and adventurous. This story we picked, me and Graham knew I was stepping down, and I really wanted to do something full cast, because that's when you get to call on all of your friends and just do a really cool production. And it's just one of the funnest things you get to do in audio fiction. And so I picked the story because it has lots of parts to read, and I thought it would make for a good full cast reading. And it's also a story that has a lot of thematic elements that I really resonated with, especially in light of having to leave PodCastle, which I adore so much. I love that it's a story that's about, how do you say goodbye? And what are goodbyes? Are goodbyes supposed to be forever? Because, in the stereotypical portal fantasy, like in Narnia or something, there's this idea of aging out, that, you have this wonderful adventure, you make all these friends, and then one day you say goodbye forever and you never speak again.
Sorry, you've menstruated now, you're not allowed back here.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's very depressing, and lots of great stuff out there about how problematic that is. But I love how this is a story. It's kind of about fighting for your friendships and fighting to keep every part of yourself, and not just letting things go because you think you've aged out of them. And I love the idea, especially that this is a fantasy, a portal fantasy, where the people inside the portal fantasy story have agency, and they fight for their friends too, and they actually get to.
It's as much a portal fantasy for them, I think, as well, isn't it? The visitors coming in are as much a delight to them as the whole world is to the visitors.
Exactly. So it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, no, it's what, 2,000-3,000 words tops? It's short, but it packs a lot of punch in that time, because it hits on those familiar cultural notes of the portal fantasy, and so it can kind of skip out a lot of the word count in establishing what emotional beats are being hit here already, because we've probably all read Narnia, so, you and I and our generation, we grew up on Narnia and all the C.S. Lewis and everything, so what they're feeling.
And I gotta say too, this is what Merkven Wolfmore is so great at too, knowing the tropes that are in a story and using them in really powerful and subversive ways. I would love to show a project that they are working on right now. They've gotten into writing visual novels. And right now they're writing one on an app called Storyloom, which you can get for free. That's all about what if the evil overlord who's supposed to murder the chosen one or attempt to murder this baby, who's then going to grow up and kill the evil overlord. What if that evil overlord decides instead to like raise this child as like his own child? And so the story is called Hero's Choice, and it's incredible. And I just want everyone to go love it as much as I do. So if you need a little more of this wonderful, compassionate, hilarious, but also beautiful, smart storytelling, go check that one out. It's great.
Murky is brilliant. I mean, I just have gone through the list of the other stories they'd had, and there were 6 stories that they've had on the podcast, and all of them are brilliant. It's just, like you say, they're such a good storyteller at taking that idea and presenting it again from a new angle, but in a way that still feels perfect and like this is the original form of it. It's just so perfectly satisfying. It's yes, wonderful. So, how did you get to be involved with podcasts in the first place? Because I think you started off with lasers, didn't you, before you switched teams?
I did. So I originally was an escape pod slusher, and I think at the time I worked for them, I was their only slusher, or maybe the most active slusher. And so there was a span of a few years there where if you got an escape pod rejection, it was probably from me, unless you got past me. So my apologies. And I was also really involved at the time with a lot of things at Escape Artists. So I was involved with like the first round of Artemis Rising, which was the celebration of women and non-binary people in fiction. But the big thing is that I was just a big giant PodCastle fangirl, and everyone knew it. I had listened to every PodCastle episode. I was always commenting on the forum. And so I'd even like written some PodCastle fanfic, which we won't talk about, but that exists somewhere out there. And so basically at the time,
talk about it?
Ask me no questions and I'll tell you no lies. You can Google it, Matt.
And indeed I will.
So
sorry.
So then I think that Dave and Anna thought that I was a pretty logical choice because I was someone who understood PodCastle's vibe and its audience and really, really, really wanted to honor that legacy, especially after such a long editorial stint. So they thought I'd be a good steady hand at the wheel. Me and Graham Dunlop, who was such a great co-editor. I love that man so much. So he kind of was the Conan the Barbarian to my Pinkie Pie in terms of our vibes for the show. And so that was kind of how I got involved with PodCastle. It was great.
Yeah. How do you think working at PodCastle changed you? Or sort of, what surprised you about it that changed you didn't expect going in?
Yeah, that's such a great question. Yeah, I think it sounds a little cheesy to say that, it's all about the friends you made along the ways. But honest to God, it's seriously the truth for me. So the friends I made while working at PodCastle have become just absolutely lifelong friends. So me and Dave Thompson are really, really great friends now to this day. My entire critique group was homegrown from the Escape Artist forums back in the day. And we were all Escape Artist fans and staffers, and our critique group still runs. We're no longer on the forums anymore, but we still stay in touch. We send each other cards. We've been in each other's living rooms. And they're people who've just made a really, really big impact on my life. And I cannot imagine my life without them, or what my life would be like right now if those people weren't in my life. For PodCastle in particular, for editing, I will say that what surprised me the most was getting an idea of what the full job of the editor is, because from the outside, you're like, oh, it's the person who picks the stories, and maybe they host sometimes. But inside the job, it's very administrative. There's just oceans of email all the time. You're always looking for new staffers too, looking for new slush readers is a constant thing, and getting people trained and answering questions from the audience and planning ahead to new events. And Escape Artists, you get to also coordinate with a pretty big team because you get to coordinate with all the other editors. But it's just a much more complex job from the outside, and there's than it looks from the outside, and there's parts of the job that are completely invisible that are needed to make the show run smoothly.
Yeah, we have a sort of group chat on Twitter, actually. It's for our sins. We sort of, probably shouldn't give the peek behind the curtain, but it's basically just a group chat of panic. As how we put it together every week, I don't know, but it is a real team effort, and it's all about covering each other. Yeah, there's so much to go, like getting narrators, oh, that narrator's sick now, they can't do it, and like this story's scheduled for like 2 weeks out. It's always close to the wire, you know. You might be accepting stories a long time ahead, but then getting the contracts out, getting the editing done, the copy editing done, the narrator lined up, and trying to get the right narrator, you know, it's something that everybody always takes really seriously, really getting that right voice. There's so many spinning plates.
It's like we need someone who both speaks Welsh and Arabic, and we need them within this window, and it needs to be someone with a nice adult female voice. They need to sound aged, and you're like, where are we going to find this person?
And yet somehow you do. You know, someone knows someone who can pass the word along, and all of a sudden you've got an email in your inbox, and it's... But there's a lot goes on behind the scenes. I don't think it's, like you say, you don't realise. You think, oh, you just do a bit of reading, go, and that one, no. Yeah.
And somehow all the little magic, you know, unicorns that are inside PodCastle make it sound wonderful and beautiful.
I think Devin and Eric are effectively magical unicorns as far as my understanding of what they do with the audio editing goes. It's
actually part of the process. It's true. I mean, you know, I'm not going to knock the magical unicorns that are out there. But
I love all the people I work with, and like I say, it is really family-like almost. It's really cheesy to say, but even with, Escape Artists as a whole, there's got to be at least 100 people now across the 4 shows and all the admin back end and everything, and you know, you've got original fiction managers and contract managers and accountants, and there's a huge like admin back end to it all now to keep it running. But it still has that real family vibe, and like you bump into someone else who's Escape Artists at con, and it's like there's that immediate connection, isn't there?
Yeah, and it's all because it's all for the love. It's something that, you know, we all do because we love the art form, and you know, it's totally worth it. Like a lot of work, and also it's cool hearing from people out in the world. That was my favorite part about being editor, was just hearing the feedback from the audience, and you know, hearing people's connections to the stories, or even like, you know, what audio fiction means in your life as you're out there going about your day, and like any number of things could be happening in your life, and like having that break to be able to go into a story for a little bit can be really powerful.
You sort of bump into someone at con, and like they see you with a PodCastle sticker on, whatever. Like, oh my god, where'd you get that? Like, oh well, I've just got a bunch of them on the I work there. Like, oh my god, can I have them? And like, you know, just you realise it's not just us noodling about in front of our microphones and our screens. There's actually people out there who listen to this. That's really weird and cool. It's kind of easy to forget sometimes, but it is nice to meet people in the wild. And you know, there's a Discord now for people who are supporters on Patreon, and just like talking to people there and everything. It's just when people are giving you feedback about, you know, how much they enjoyed a story, it is really nice to think, oh, you know, the effort we put in, it does land and it does hit right. It's very satisfying, isn't it? On your own writing, there was a while there, sort of 6 or 8 years ago, where it seemed like you were everywhere in short fiction. You were Lightspeed, you were Fireside, you were everything. And then went a little quieter for you, because I know you were kind of going through grad school at the time, and that was taking up a lot of the oxygen in the room. So kind of question, how do you balance your real life and writing, and how do you keep your enthusiasm going for it when there's only the scraps of the day available to you?
That's like the perennial question for every author with a day job.
This is why I'm asking. I want to know. Tell me the answer. I need the answer, Rachel.
Yes. So, like, I have gotten better about this over recent years through a lot of trial and error, because I will not lie, I did have a couple years there of, like, total burnout where, you know, you stare at the screen and your brain is a total potato and the story just isn't happening. And that's pretty normal. So, like, every author I've talked with, like, has those phases where you kind of come and go. Then, actually, in some ways, what really got me more into a groove was starting to work on longer stuff. So working on like more novel length fiction. Right. And the reason because of that, the reason for that is that because in the world of longer fiction, they have this magical tool called an outline where you plan your story in advance and you break it down into teeny tiny little pieces. And then it turns out like you can do a little teeny tiny piece of something in like half an hour here and there. And I'm being a little facetious, you can hear. And the reason is because that before that, as a short story author, during that period where I was publishing that first big giant wave of short stories, I was what we call in the biz a pantser. So authors identify themselves as plotters, people who like to plot their stuff in advance, or pantsers, people who write by the seat of their pants. And I was the latter for many, many years. So I had to sit down, and if I had a couple hours of time, I could sit there and like just sort of find my way through a story and make it up as I went along. But it turns out that requires a pretty big block of time to do up front. And like, it's a,
and a big block of emotional energy as well.
Yes, exactly. We have to kind of like really be in the groove and like get into that deep focus work and like, and it's not easy to like recreate that without having enough time to get there and be at your favorite coffee shop and having the right level of caffeine and like all the magical conditions that make that worthwhile, or make that possible. So like, in the world of novels, though, it's super, super normal and probably the default to work from outlines instead. Lots of people pants novels also, but like there's good reasons not to do that if you don't want to create yourself a lot of work on the back end. So I got into outlining and I started outlining even my short stories and like and it turns out that when you do that, you break up the task of writing into 2 different phases. So there's kind of like the business that you're like now the administrator of your short story. We're going to sit there and make yourself a to-do list. And then, like, later on, you get to be the little worker monkey where you just take the next item on the to-do list of, like, okay, now I've got to describe the crazy futuristic car rally that's full of the Dinobots that are now going to go smash each other and, destroy each other in epic ways. And, like, you can just take that down to one task and do that one at a time as you're putting together the story. The other tool that has been really great for me is actually the Notes app on my phone. Yeah. And this is something I think is probably not like reinventing the wheel or anything, but like I found that like throughout my workday that a lot of times, like I have the kind of day job where I don't have a lot of downtime. Like I'm constantly on my feet and constantly doing things, but sometimes I'll have little thoughts. Like you'll be walking around, taking like a little quick 5-minute break as you're prepping for the next thing, and like suddenly an idea or an image pops into your brain for a story.
Always
and, like,
the most inconvenient moment, isn't it? Never when you're sat down trying to. It's when you're driving and can't do anything about it. Yeah,
exactly. The shower thoughts, that kind of thing. Exactly. So like what I've done now in recent years is now I've got like little organized folders on my Notes app where like I've got like different projects I'm working on, and if I have a thought in the middle of the day about a project I'm working on, especially something that can go into the outline, I just throw it down there and like, and then I've got a set time during the week where I sit down and like look at the Notes app and pull it out and organize all that and like, set up my to-do list for later that week. So that means when I sit down and I have 30 minutes here and there, like, 30 minutes before work or a little bit of time after work before I make dinner or that kind of stuff, I can really dig in and make some meaningful progress.
You've got grist for the mill. You don't have to come up with something there and then because you've already come up with things. Now you've just got to implement it.
You don't have the blank screen. Like, and like, I think that maybe working on longer work has given me more of a sense of trust in myself that, even if progress looks slow, that it adds up piece by piece and that, any meaningful little tiny chomp I can take on the project is going to add up in the long run. And like, another cool thing I found out too is that, I used to believe that like my emotional state while writing would be reflective of the product that I put out. So like, if I'm writing when I'm super burnout and in a bad mood, that the audience would be able to tell. And I found that it's actually not true because by the time you go through the revision process and you polish things up, I kind of can no longer identify which parts of the story, like, I was
especially
really in a
if you're
good
plotting now instead of pantsing. I mean, if you're pantsing, it's probably obvious still, but
maybe you get a little more of that spike where you can tell that you were really in it. Or when you're pantsing, you always have to kind of be in it, I guess. Yeah. Like anyway, so it's been sort of nice just to like let go of this idea that like there's any kind of magic that like my skill is going to be there and accessible to me regardless of whether or not like I'm feeling it. And the nice thing is, or maybe the downside is maybe might also like weaknesses as a writer are going to be present regardless of whether or not I'm feeling it. So it just kind of all averages out.
Yeah, I sort of realised in the last sort of year or two, writing is. You think you're just sitting down at a keyboard, but it takes so much energy because it's that constant decision fatigue. It's just decisions all the way down.
Yes.
You're deciding what's this character going to do next? How's that person going to respond to what they've just said in the dialogue? What's the right word I'm looking for in this sentence? Where should this comma best go to represent the flow? It's just decisions all the way. And
What's their name? What's their name, Matt? I have to come up with another name. It's
and
terrible.
It does. If you've not got the emotional energy left at the end of a day, it is impossible. It is blood from a stone, which is a cliche. There you go. But I'm a writer. I'm good at coming up with original thoughts. But it is also 9:30 at night for me. So, emotional energy is at a low. It's hard to, if you're waiting for writing time to coincide with energy time, it just doesn't happen, does it? You've got to take it where it comes, I think, haven't you?
Yeah. And like, The upside to being a writer with a day job is I will say that I do get a lot of inspiration from my day job. Like your brain kind of gets cross-pollinated with interesting people and like just stuff that comes up, and like even the things that annoy you at work can kind of make for good stories, and like a lot of that eventually does come out in my writing. So versus maybe being alone all day in my office and staring at the wall waiting for inspiration to come.
I think weirdly, a place you see that is with bands and songwriting, because bands' first albums are always really interesting with lots of good thoughts about like life and what it's like being poor and scrappy. But by like album 4, they're like, yeah, it's really tough being on tour in America. God. Like, and that's everybody's fourth album. You're like, you know, you've stopped living a normal life now, haven't you? There's no inspiration left in that well. You said, talking about writing longer, up till now, I think the longest thing you've had published is a novella, isn't it? Every River Runs to Salt, which was at Fireside, which I did enjoy very much. I thought it was very Gaiman-esque, but in a the south of America, the USA kind of way, rather than Gaiman's obviously very British sort of sensibility. Are there longer things coming then, or?
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes, in fact.
Any you can talk about?
Okay, lots of stuff. So I'm still writing a lot of short fiction, and I'm writing a lot of longer stuff. So like the funny thing about like getting into longer fiction is that some of the skills from short stories do transfer, and then a lot of it you're kind of learning from the ground up. And the big thing is that novels require a lot more structure than a short story does. Short stories can be kind of boneless and flop around and still be kind of fun, microcellular creatures. But like novels have to have bones and have to have structure to hold them up and make them work and have the pacing work correctly. So over the last 6 years, I wrote a few bad novels. I wrote a mediocre novel, and then I kind of wrote a pretty good novel. And then I wrote a really good novel. And right now, I say that, but who knows? Maybe it sucks. So I'm just now wrapping up a draft of a YA novel it's a YA fantasy that's set at a magic school. And it's sort of like my take on maybe we all have things that annoy us about famous franchises. One of them is Harry Potter for me. Mm-hmm. And one particular aspect of Harry Potter that really annoys me is that because at my day job, I work at a school, I feel like that as a magic school novel, I'm frustrated by the fact that it doesn't deal with disability very well. That you've got these kids wandering around. They have they have memory problems. Like Neville Longbottom, or who clearly has memory problems and has trauma, and I'm like, why are these teachers and they just sort of say, oh yeah, go deal with that, and none of the teachers actually teach or help children in a magic school setting overcome disabilities that are related to magic. And
there is very little pastoral care in Hogwarts.
There's not, And so I was like, what if you had a school that took disability seriously and took magical disability seriously? So what would it look like if you had disabilities that impacted your access to magic?
Rather than just making them the janitor. Exactly.
Yeah. Or even in the Harry Potter universe, the very worst thing to be would be a muggle, which is a person with no magic at all. It's almost like
yeah, it's
the most severe disability.
Sneered down. Yeah, or even worse, a squib. I mean, you should have magic and you don't.
And no one does anything for him. I'm like, wait a minute, there's lots of things he could probably do. Since I work in special education, I'm like, well, what if could you have a familiar that maybe goes and helps you, so an animal could help you, I'm losing my words today. But kind of like a seeing eye dog or something, or an animal that could help you access things, or you could use items. Maybe you have items that help you access magic, or maybe you have a person who's designated there to perform the magic for you, but you're the one who dictates what's being done. So there's things that you could do, even if you're completely non-magical, within your physical body, that someone could give you access to that school. And so that's kind of, my novel deals with a whole bunch of that. I won't spoil it too much because it's not the Harry Potter universe, and it goes in some very different directions. But that's sort of the heart of the story, where it's all about access and ability, and in the setting of a magic school. So super excited about that. If you are a fan of my short stories, I have good news for you, because I have sold 10 short stories so far this year.
Bloody this year? It's only May?
This year. I know. Well, a lot of them are reprints, which means that they've been published before, right. But a lot of them are originals. So, if that's your jam, I've got a few. I don't know what all the release dates will be yet, but I know that I've got a portal fantasy, in fact, coming out at Nightmare Magazine. So it would be a very dark portal fantasy story. I've got another short story, a science fiction story, coming out at Lightspeed. if you want to stay around escape artists, Escape Pod is going to be reprinting one of my stories called The Greatest One-Star Restaurant in the Whole Quadrant, which is
my favorite.
Yes, Matt was instrumental in critiquing this one back when it was a wee little baby, not only, I think, 1 day old when I wrote the story.
Yeah. How you came up with that so quickly is staggers me. This is how I know you were better writer than me, because what you did in 24 hours was so much better than anything I could ever have dreamt of.
We had to get some context to everybody here. So me and Matt met in person for the first time at this writing workshop years ago, where there was a challenge where you were given 24 hours to produce a short story from idea to finished draft. And it was wild. And I ended up writing about cannibal cyborg food trucks. And
as you do.
Yeah, like you do. And it was described as sick and twisted and made some people physically ill. So,
and it's brilliant, and I love it.
I thought it was hilarious. I cackled the entire time I wrote, when I was writing that story. Matt was there. I was literally cackling.
Yes.
So, if you want that, go over to Escape Pod. I think it might be coming out later this month. We're recording right now in May, so it may already be out by now, actually.
Yes, because this episode won't actually go out until the start of July, so time
maybe you've already heard it then.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so there you go. There's some other stuff, too. If you follow my blog, which is rachelkjones.com, then you can get announcements as things come out, or, follow me over on Twitter or Mastodon at Rachel K. Jones.
And maybe you should send some in to us, because it's been a while. So I've just had a look. 633 was the last time we had a story here with Night Bazaar for women becoming reptiles.
It's been way too long,
Because Makacia in Time was number 2 in our 10th anniversary best of list, as voted for by listeners. So, clearly your stories are popular here. You should send us some more so we can have them again.
I do, yeah. I absolutely will do that. Yes.
Please do.
Yeah, I would love to be on PodCastle again.
We would love to have you back. I think I did try and look up and see if this was actually the last time your voice had been on here because the last time this story ran, as you said, was your goodbye episode.
Yeah.
The drama of that goodbye was completely undone by the very next episode being narrated by you anyway, so your voice was immediately back on the next week. But you did then. You popped back recently for us actually to narrate the Gorgon's Glass, didn't you?
Yes,
which was
such a great story.
May 24th, so about 12 months ago from when we're recording this. So yes, that was a very clever story, that one. But other than that, it's been a long time since we've had you about on podcasts. So it's been lovely having you here, and it would be lovely to have your stories here as well. Yeah. Which is not to say that I'm saying goodbye now. It was just a digression.
Of course, we talk about Nicolas Cage still.
That is the very next question. There you go. Because I couldn't possibly interview you without asking about Nicolas Cage. So. He has been fantastically prolific these last few years, even by his standards. So, what is it about him that you love so much? And go on, what's your favourite of his recent films? Because there's a lot to choose from.
We're in the middle of a beautiful Nicolas Cage renaissance, and if you are a Nicolas Cage fan, then you'll know why this makes my heart happy. I think it's kind of hard to describe why I like Nicolas Cage. There was this one summer years and years and years ago where, back when video stores used to be a thing, me and my husband were we went to the old video store, and we were let's rent a bunch of movies that star different actors, that star the same actor in them. And so we had a Nicolas Cage week, and we enjoyed that experience so much that the next week became Nicolas Cage week, and the week after that. And before we know it, we'd spent an entire month watching Nicolas Cage movies. We called it Nicolas Cage Match. And by the end of it, so the weirdest thing about doing this is that the first time you watch a movie that doesn't have Nicolas Cage in it, you start waiting to see him, and he never shows up, and it's the weirdest experience to be where's Nicolas Cage going to show up in this movie? And so, it sort of became a thing. So we started watching Nicolas Cage movies every year. So every year we'd have 1 month where we'd only watch Nicolas Cage movies. And the man has a lot of movies. So you can do that and not have to repeat very many, or never repeat any of them. And the thing about Nicolas Cage is that he's the kind of creative that I want to be. So he's a man who takes a lot of different roles. Some of them are terrible. Some of them are great. And whatever role he's in, you can tell that he genuinely enjoys his job. He enjoys the creative work of acting. He enjoys what he's bringing to a role and his unique delivery. And he knows that sometimes his delivery is hilarious. And I think he values that about himself, that he's sort of unique and one of a kind. And even to his terrible straight to VHS, the $3 bin special at Walmart, those sorts of movies. Even then, you watch these movies and he's the one who's having the most fun in any movie he's in. And that's sort of what I want to be as a creative. It's like you can't always control how successful your stuff is and like what gets awards or what gets any attention, but you can enjoy the process of making it. And
you cannot deny that the man always throws himself into the role and into the production and gives his everything, no matter how low budget it is. I mean, yeah, we watched Willy's Wonderland when it came, well, that year and a half ago.
That's a great movie.
Does he even say half a dozen words in that movie? I saw an interview that says, like, no, he models it and being like the man in black and everything, but like, he is having so much fun. It's brilliant. And like, you've hired Nicolas Cage for a film and he barely says anything, and yet he's still by far the best thing in it. Phenomenal.
So, like, yeah, best movie over the last 5 years. His best serious movie was probably Pig, which is about, like, the film industry in Portland, Oregon. His best funny movie was probably The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
I love that.
It's sort of a parody done with a lot of love towards Nicolas Cage fans like me. And I have a PodCastle themed Nicolas Cage anecdote that I would love to share too, maybe if we have time.
We've got 5 minutes, so
great.
We're good.
This is perfect. So I'll keep it short and sweet. So because this is an untold story that involves a lot of PodCastle editors. So
amazing.
Way back when me and Graham Dunlop had first taken over PodCastle, Graham, who lives in Australia, happened to be in the United States, and he had the opportunity to come visit me in Georgia, where I lived at the time. Out in the middle of nowhere. And so that was super cool that my new friend from Australia was in my living room. And his last stop on his trip was going to take him to Los Angeles, where Dave Thompson lives, one of the previous editors of PodCastle. And so we came up with a plan to prank Dave Thompson by printing out something about 1,000 tiny Nicolas Cage faces. They were about the size of my pinky, like little teeny tiny faces. And I gave him a giant sack of them to take with him. And Graham's instructions were to like take a roll of clear tape and then wait until Dave Thompson was out of the house and then put Nicolas Cage in as many faces as he possibly could. So I want you to know that this went over beautifully. There was some day when Graham was visiting Dave's house when everyone went for a walk or something, or they were napping, and Graham went to town. There was Nicolas Cage faces on things in the fridge. They were in the bottom of every coffee mug in the cabinet. He opened up random books in the bookshelf and stuffed Nicolas Cage faces into the pages. He went to every family photo in the house and put a Nicolas Cage over each face on each of the Thompson family members' faces. So all your adorable baby photos or wedding photos or anything, but now starring two Nicolas Cages and
he is very prolific. Why not?
He was everywhere. So they were everywhere. And it was so bad. There are so many Nicolas Cages in this house that to this day, this is probably 8 years later, sometimes I'll get a text from Dave Thompson that somebody found another Nicolas Cage face. They pulled a book off the shelf, opened it, and one fell out on the floor. So there you go. So that's the time that 3 PodCastle editors conspired for.
He's in our very DNA, it turns out.
There you go. You never knew.
Fantastic. Right. In the couple of minutes remaining to us then, what works would you recommend people read if they're interested in your stuff, and where can people find out more about you? Although I think you've said that anyway, but it's always good to repeat.
Yeah, check out my stuff on PodCastle if you haven't before. It's got some of my absolute favorites. Yeah, The Night Bazaar from Becoming Reptiles is a fan fave. There's a story on the Drabblecast called The Innsmouth of the South, which is a Lovecraftian humor piece, which I think a lot of people really love. And yeah, check out the Cannibal Cyborg food truck story coming out, or maybe that has come out in Escape Pod, the greatest 1-star restaurant in the whole quadrant. If you want even more of my stuff, go to my website, which is www.rachelkjones.com, and I've got my complete bibliography and also some excerpted fan favorites. And yes, you can follow me on Twitter at Rachel K. Jones, although, now in the age of Elon Musk,
I mean, we're recording this 6 weeks before it goes out. Twitter might not exist by this point.
Who knows? Yeah, but if not, find me on Mastodon at Rachel K. Jones at wandering.shop. And you can always find wherever I'm at nowadays in social media on my website. So I'll keep that up to date. Assuming no more billionaires buy out any more social media sites. So,
We shall see, eh? Turns out entrusting the essential social infrastructure of our age to the whims of billionaires has maybe got some downsides, but
I guess.
Who could have seen
Who
that coming? Rachel, it has been an absolute delight to have you back on podcast. It's been too long since your voice has been here, notwithstanding the one story you narrated. It's been marvellous, and I'm glad to see you're doing well. So thank you very much for being part of our 15th birthday celebrations. 15 bloody years.
Woo,
I've been here for 7
PodCastle.
of them now. You know, I've been here for half the time now. That feels
Awesome.
bizarre to me. I'm still the new kid. What's going on? What do you mean I'm the longest standing? Nonsense. Anyway, Zoom's about to kick us off, so
Okay.
I really will say thank you and good night.
You're awesome, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our show for this week. On behalf of everyone at PodCastle, your co-editors Shingai Enjiro Kagunda and Eleanor R. Wood, assistant editor Caitlin Zavanovich, audio engineers Devin Martin and Eric Valdez, forum moderator Ossicat, and our many wonderful first readers, Andrew K. Ho, Craig Jackson, Amalia Harrington, Julia Patt, Kieran Corsini, Ryan Cole, Sarah S. Messenger, Sophie Barker, Shrikripa Krishna Prasad, Tarva Nova, Tierney Bailey, Zeev Witties, and myself, Matt Dovey. Thank you for letting us share another story with you. The legal bit. PodCastle is part of the Escape Artists Foundation, a 501c3 non-profit, and this episode is distributed under the Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. That means you can share it, and please do, but you cannot sell it and you cannot change it. If you want specifics, check creativecommons.org. Our music is by Shiva in Exile. Everything we do on PodCastle is 100% donor funded, and if you'd like to support what we and the rest of EA do, please join us on our Patreon at patreon.com/EA Podcasts. Prefer another method? There's details for supporting us via Twitch, Amazon Prime, Ko-fi and PayPal on escapeartist.net. We'll be back next Tuesday with another fantastic tale. In the meantime, you might care to check our sister podcasts, Escape Pod for science fiction, Pseudopod for horror, Cast of Wonders for YA speculative fiction, and Catscast for speculative cat stories. If your heart belongs to us, though, we'll see you next week. Be safe and be kind.